Hey everybody, it's Anna. Welcome back to my Fluid Art channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today I have a special guest,
David, otherwise known as Left Brained Artist.
and we are here to talk about some of the fluid paintings that you have submitted and give you some tips, answer some questions that you have about them. So these paintings were submitted by Payne. He submitted 3 paintings. This one was a triple flip cup. He put penetrol in some of the colors, which is creating that cell effect. It's kind of like a silicone oil. So he had 2 cool cups on the side and then a warm cup in the middle. And he said the warm flip cup kind of turned to mud, and so he ended up swiping it with a cell activator, which I think looks really cool. But he was wondering, why did that happen? Why did it turn to mud?
So first of all, if you don't mind me go on first, I don't think Penetrol works very well like silicone when you put it in drops and then you do like a flip cup or things like that. I think where Penetrol shines is being added to a swipe color and then swiping with it. So um, if you want the cells from a flip cup or something like that, I think you're better off with the silicone. Although you can get some cells with Penetrol, I just don't think it works as well. And that's probably why the swipe did so much better than just the flip cup, specific to the Penetrol.
Yeah, I think the swipe looks pretty cool. What I noticed, the paint brands that that you used, Paul, you had some Liquitex Basics, Deco Art, Winsor and Newton, but then your yellow was Craft Smart, which is a craft paint. And so in that center cup, the Winsor and Newton red is a high quality paint, and the Craft Smart yellow is a low quality paint. And sometimes when those two mix together, especially at a ratio of 1 part paint to 3 parts Floetrol, that's a pretty thin paint. And I think the yellow probably just couldn't keep up, and probably the yellow was responsible for a lot of the mud. That is my guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And the colors on the outside, to be bluntly honest, I really love the juxtaposition of the
Oh, yeah.
the fire in the middle and the cool colors on the outside. I think you got a great result, especially with the number of cells on the right hand side and then the swipe. I think are great. It may not be what you expected, but I still think it's a great piece of art.
I agree.
So let's pop over to the next one.
Okay, so this is a Nautilus pour. He saw a Nautilus pour that I did, and then I recommended watching Nate Bright, who I believe invented the technique, and he certainly has perfected the technique. So he did a Nautilus pour. He said, the colors are muted, I don't see a spiral, and the center looks weird. So my thoughts on that were, first of all, I do see a spiral. If you kind of step back, you can see there's a patterning of the blue and of kind of the white. So there is a spiral in there. I think the main reason why you don't see much of a spiral is because the canvas is too small. This looks to me like maybe a 10-inch square, 12-inch at the most. And Nautilus pour really works best when it's 14, 16, 18, and you can see a lot of those layers opening up on the canvas. So I think that's the reason why you're not seeing much of a spiral, though I can still see it. I think yours looks more like Nate's Nautilus pours than mine did. In terms of the colors being muted, anytime you have thin paint that's being poured out and it's kind of blending, it's gonna mix and blend. It could be because you had a little bit of gray in your base. That might be muting your colors a little bit. I'm not positive. And then the center's always going to look different from the rest of your pour, just because that's where the first paint lands in the bottom of your strainer. So it could be because of the base layer that you had. It could be that you poured in blue right at the start, and then the last color to come out is that sort of golden. So when you lift it up, what you're left with is blue. So I don't think that center looks bad. I think most Nautilus pours, the center it's a different color.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to admit, I've never heard of a Nautilus pour. So I'm missing a video both on your channel, Anna, and on Nate Bright's channel. So I'm going to have to go take a peek. I am familiar with the pour with a strainer, And I agree. You can definitely see. I think one thing is when you have thin paints and you use paints that are exactly opposite on the color wheel. So, for example, here we have a blue and a orange. Those colors are going to mute each other always.
Yeah.
So you either want to use thicker paint or you want to put a color in between them so they don't touch, so they don't mute themselves. And that's probably why the color didn't pop as much as you were expecting it to.
Yeah, so the Nautilus pour, it is supposed to be done with a pretty thin paint, and it's usually a 3-chamber split cup. So there probably is something separating it, but when it's only 3, they're going to touch.
Yeah.
But yeah, that may be why colors are muting a bit. When I did mine, I don't know if my paint wasn't thin enough or what, but I had really, really crisp, like tiny layers, and it looked like a peacock tail.
Awesome.
So I still have not gotten this kind of a Nautilus look yet. I don't know what I'm doing, but
Yeah, I mean, I think especially that middle section, that's what draws my eye. You know, you have the blue in the middle and then the kind of orange around in the kind of half middle and then the stuff on the outside. That really kind of draws my eyes in. I really like how that turned out, but
it's a nice one.
exactly.
I would say try it on a bigger canvas. You could even do exactly the same paints. If you do it on a bigger canvas, I think you're going to end up happier with it.
And then we have a third one.
Yes, so he said he's looking for feedback on cloud pours because it's something that gives him trouble. So this is a 12-inch round canvas, and he did it in Gina DeLuca's style. So he's using Liquitex Basics and Deco Art paints. He poured from up high to blend the paints, did a slow straight pour while turning the canvas slowly, and then he spent about 10 minutes torching and letting cells develop, and then he spun it out. But here's the thing that stood out to me. He said the base paint was mixed with Floetrol, 1-2 Floetrol, but then the colors he first mixed 1-1 with white satin enamel paint, and then he mixed those blended paints, 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol. So the thing that I see here is that there's not a ton of contrast in this pour. And I think the large reason for that is because all of your colors have had white added to them, so they've become kind of pastel. And so none of those pastel colors are really going to pop out at you because they've all been muted by that white.
Yeah, I love Gina's cloud pours that she does. And they are really hard to master. So if you like how the outside turned, I would look at how you layered the paints and what happened to the paints while you were layering them. Because I'm assuming here that the green dropped right to the bottom. It all came out right at the end. And then that expanded from the center outward. And that's why you don't have very many colors because the green kind of dominated. And one thing you can do is you can try thickening the paint up, and I'm talking about just a little bit of thickening of paint in a pour like this can actually make a huge difference. And now that you know green does that, the next one I did, I probably would have put less green or done green in a different order to see if I couldn't help that out.
I think the green was the base color. I didn't write that down, but I think the green was the base, and so he specifically put some of it into the bottom of the cup, but it does seem like too much has come out right at the end.
Right. And Gina does that on purpose. You know, she puts most of her stuff, most of her base layer out on the pour and then just does a little bit of that in at the beginning and in different layers. And, it could be it just was so heavy it dropped to the bottom. It's hard to tell without knowing exactly. And I will tell you, I didn't look up the pigments to see if those ones are heavy or what brand it was, because it's not just pigments. The brand of paint, the fillers they have, the additives they have, all go into how that paint rises or falls into other paint.
Yeah. One other thing that I would say is if you're doing a straight pour, when you pour it from up high, the paint will kind of churn and mix, and so your colors are going to blend more, which you might want or you might not want. Because your colors are all kind of pastel since they've been mixed with white, that has even lessened further the contrast that you'd be getting from your colors. Whereas if you poured from lower down, you might have more definition from that pour going out.
Was there a metallic color in here?
I
I
didn't
don't
write it
remember.
down. I just wrote the brands, not the colors.
Because that's another thing that helps is she uses a couple of metallic colors and then generally some that are not metallic. And metallics
Hmm.
can do some crazy things and they help with the cells for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing is, if you're mixing everything with satin enamel paint is a nice low density, which is a light paint, which is great for making those clouds cells. But if every single color has the satin enamels in it, then the magic has it has nothing to compare to. And
Right.
so it might not react as much as if you had some paints that were regular, and then you had certain colors that were regular, some that were metallic, and then others that were the satin enamels that could then create the clouds in and between your other colors.
Hope that helps.
Yeah, you've got some great art, and hopefully that helps you make it even better next time.
All right. So these paintings we have from Everett Alexander, and he sent in a couple of different paintings. He was using Blick pouring medium, and we're assuming Blick paints, but he didn't say in here. Um, and just wanted some overall feedback on the color schemes and just the pouring in general. I'll tell you of these paintings, I love this color scheme. I love this color scheme. I love this color scheme. This one I think just looks a little drab. I think because again we're using colors that are opposite, yellow and purple on the color wheel, and they mixed a lot. It just kind of dimmed down the painting. But again, that's my personal opinion. I guarantee you somebody's going to look at this and say, "You're crazy, David. That's amazing color palette. I love this painting." Just how it works with abstract art. And I actually really like this color scheme also. Um, my one thing is if you want to change things, the consistency of your paint, if you let it be a little bit thicker, you're going to get thicker lines and more defined lines. If you let it be a little bit thinner, you're going to get the squiggly lines that you see, especially, sorry about that, especially in like this one. I can tell that the paint was very thin and probably the orange was thinner than the other paints just because of how it shows up. But it's not bad. It's not, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just when you have thinner paints, you get kind of that chaos in the painting. And if you thicken it up a little bit, you can get some more defined lines. The second thing is if you use silicone, which I believe you did in some of these, based on your comments and how they look, thicker paint, you get better defined circular cells. Thinner paint, as you move it around, you're going to get a lot more amoeba like looking paints. And so it's not, like I said, it's not good or bad. It's just if you want to make a change and you decide with your silicone you want it to be little bit thicker, or a little bit bigger cells, torch early before you tilt, let the paint be a little bit thicker and you'll get those bigger, more circular cells. What do you think, Anna?
Yeah, I think these are pretty cool. So these, I think they all used a split cup and it kind of in a ribbon pour style, which is really neat. This one that I'm looking at, I love it. I love the contrast of the colors. Now you see there are some wide bands of color, and then there are some little tiny lines that are kind of crossing over, and I think that's where the paint was running out of the cup, and so it was like the last little kind of segments, and you might love that. To me, it looked very clean. Like if it didn't have those, it would look much cleaner and more like bam. So one of the things you can think about is you don't have to pour all of the paint onto your canvas. You can pour until your cup stops pouring in the manner that you want it to pour, and then not pour the rest. And that's totally okay if you're looking for a cleaner look. In terms of some of the other ones too, if you don't mind scrolling just a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, so this one, do you see how a lot of those cells are like kind of hook shaped? So this happens when you over tilt your paint, or you tilt it like, you pick it up and you just go one direction and you don't do any kind of back and forth action, because certain areas flow faster than others and it warps all of your cells. So if you want that, then great, tilt that way. If you want your cells to stay round, really watch how your paint is moving and think about tilting a little bit more slowly, maybe kind of back and forth it. Julie Cuts from the channel Pouring Your Heart Out, she calls it walking the paint down the canvas, which I think is a great way of stretching. And sometimes if you walk the paint one way and you've got those curved cells, you can walk it back the other way, and sometimes they'll even out. They don't always, but sometimes they can.
So just I hadn't noticed that before, but just to make sure I'm seeing that the same way that you're describing, these cells are kind of turned like this. So I'm assuming the
Mm-hmm.
last direction that was tilted was top right, and it was just tilted for a while. So all of these, so you can see them all kind of, it looks like they're flowing to that direction as
Mm-hmm.
they were tilting. I hadn't noticed that before, so I'm glad you pointed it out. I do want to say this band right here is amazing. Just the colors and rainbow it looks inside of the white. That's what really grabs my eye on this one. I really liked that.
Yeah, that's cool. Can you go over to the pink one? So this one, I really like the colors on it. There's a lot of squiggling back and forth, which I call kind of the chaos style. And that, I think part of that's caused by the way that you poured on the ribbons. And I think part of it is caused by tilting it this way, then tilting it that way, then tilting it this way, then tilting it that way. And so the different areas of paint, they're not all staying sort of as unified sections. They're moving this way and that way, and it's making those zigzags. So if that's what you're going for, then lots of back and forth is what you want to do. If you want it to stay in like cleaner lines or more graceful curves, try to tilt as few times as possible. You kind of go to each corner and then you just basically center it how you want it, and that will make a less chaotic effect if that's what you'd like to go for. Oh, and then there was one more. Where's the blue and purple one? That one. So I really like this one. This one is much calmer, so I can tell that you tilted it less, which I personally am drawn to. I like the colors. Now down in the bottom left corner, there's a little bit like a little blue curve, and even further down. Yep. Yeah, right down there. So that curve to me, I would say, oh, if I could just lose that curve, everything else would balance a little bit better. So the way that I would get rid of that is I would continue tilting towards that corner until that little blue curve and possibly even the pink curve goes off of the corner. And then I'd tilt it back up towards the top to even out your design. Sometimes it's amazing how just taking a little section and pushing it off and then restretching your paint back the other direction, it can really make everything feel more balanced.
I just got to say, I can see that you're pouring. I can see that you're passionate about this. And in the end, that is really what's important about acrylic pouring. And you're on the right track. Hopefully, this helps. And the next paintings that you get, you can visualize more what you're doing and get the results that you're looking for.
These next two paintings are from Jasmine. She did a tree and she did a seahorse, and she was just looking for feedback from both of those. So she said her paints are mixed with Floetrol and water, but she doesn't measure specific ratios. Her base paint was house paint with water, and then her colors were craft paints and house paints mixed with Floetrol and water. So this tree is a silicone sort of micro swipe, and then she used a palette knife to add the branches and the trunk. So I think this is cool. This is a pretty neat looking tree. I like the metallic kind of copperish color there in the middle. I think one of the issues that you're seeing here and also in the Seahorse, we'll look at that in a second, having your base paint mixed too thin, I think your base is too watery. Especially house paint with water can make some strange effects, and you see how the lacing is going a little bit strange and growing out of proportion in certain areas, and I think that's largely because your base paint should be mixed the same as your other paints. If your colors are being mixed with Floetrol, then your base paint should also be mixed with Floetrol and should be the same consistency. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I mean, your trunk is better than I've been able to do. I don't know why swiping for a tree like this has always been difficult for me. So well done there. And I actually really like the subtle gold in the back. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the I think the one difference is you have two colors that are very opaque in the green and the blue. Both of them they must have some sort of white in them just because they're so opaque, and they kind of it would be nice if I got other colors layered over the top of them just to get
Mm.
some fading of colors in between the two. That's just what comes to mind initially, but so maybe those are some suggestions for getting a little bit different look next time.
I think a lot of times the tree swipes are done vertically. So you've done sort of a horizontal tree, and I think a lot of the times I've seen them where it's done more in the portrait orientation and the swiping goes sideways. So it's a longer trunk and the sideways swiping and not usually using silicone in that swipe. So obviously you've branched out and you've made this your own, but most of what I've seen is sort of a different orientation and not silicone, and it's possible that if you tried it that way, you might like that result too.
So this is your bread and butter. I know that video that you made
It's
on
my
the
seahorse.
yeah, it is super popular, and she did a much better job than I've ever done with a seahorse. That's for sure.
So this is a cute little seahorse. I really like the face. I think we've got some strange lacing in the back, and that I think is because of the house paint and water base layer. I think it's too watery and it's just reacting strangely with the colors. But um, I think overall it looks like the rest of your consistencies are pretty good, like your paints aren't way too thick. I would say, I don't know if you wanted to have those bright sections of green on the face and the belly, and if you did, great, you did it exactly right. If you didn't want giant pockets of green, I would say uh, be careful about making a nice defined leading edge color so that every swipe starts. So if you want it to be purple all along the front, then every swipe begins with that purple and then crosses over the green so the green can come up as cells. Um, but it's very cute.
Yeah, you definitely nailed the picture of a seahorse. Um, I think you did a great job there. I'm with your seahorse. I can't remember, and I apologize. Did you freehand the seahorse, or did you put tape down, do the seahorse, and then did the other piece separate? I don't
I
remember.
did a tape stencil because I
That's
definitely
right.
cannot freehand that. Well, it's less about not being able to freehand, and it's more because when I swiped each time, I wanted to just get the color and not any of the base paint. So I
Right.
had a stencil with paint along it, and then I pulled that, and then I added the paint layer, the base paint, on the other half of the seahorse.
And that gave you better crisp lines in your, at
Yeah, it
least
gave me a
for
nice,
this case, this portion of the seahorse.
right.
Okay, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd love to see your next few that you do, Jasmine. I think this is just going to get better.
These next four paintings come from Rosemary, and she's wondering, why does the black base sometimes take over the painting? Rosemary, I feel your pain. One of the things that I've had to deal with this year is black paint taking over paintings, and I've had to try to figure out what is it. So your black paint is Amsterdam Lamp Black, and this is a paint and water mixture. And can we just see those four pictures really quick? Because
Yeah,
this one, it's not taking over too much, but that one, it's definitely making those round cells. That one, I can see a little bit. There are some black spots coming up. And then on the last one, there's almost none of that black spot coming up. So it is kind of a, well, why does it happen this time and why does it not happen that time? So when I have had this issue happen, it has been with Creative Inspirations Lamp Black. And it's a light density paint. This is a density issue. So Lamp Black, at least Creative Inspirations Lamp Black, I didn't know that Amsterdam might be the same, but it's a low density paint, meaning it's light. So when you blow your colors over it, that black is wanting to rise up through that layer of your other colors, and it's going to make those round cells. So even though it's a high quality paint, if your other colors are denser than the black, it's going to make those cells. And that might be why in some paintings you get a lot of cells, because the colors you happen to have on the top, like white is a very dense color, and that blue may also be a dense color in this one right here. Whereas in some of your other pours, you may have happened to pick colors that were lighter themselves, and so the black paint didn't rise throughout because there wasn't as much interaction there. So I think that might be the issue. And in terms of learning how to fix that or predict it, one thing that I've learned this summer, David, partly from your recommendation in our last video, was to use Payne's Gray, which is a dense paint. So you could either use that instead of black, or you could mix the two together to make sort of a medium density paint if the black is too light and the Payne's Gray is heavier. So that could be a way of adding density to your black so that you don't get these cells.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just actually looking. I have a paint density chart on my website. I don't know if you can see this here. And I looked up lamp black, and lamp black uses the pigment PBK7, which is a much lighter version of black. Mars Black, for example, uses PBK11, I believe it is, and it is much heavier. So the lamp black is actually a lightweight, not dense paint. And so that is going to happen. That's probably exactly what happened in this case. And you can see that actually a little bit in this painting. Like you said, a lot more in this one, a bit in this one. And then this last painting, I love the fire and ice paintings that we have here. One thing interesting that I saw is you've got green. I don't know if you knew this, but black and yellow can make green. I would highly recommend that everybody kind of experiments with that, just because on a black base, when you're using yellow in the fire, you can end up getting green because of that. In this case, it could also be a little bit of the blue and yellow mixing to get that green on this side. I actually think this is a great result. I'm not sure exactly. The hard part about art is we're not sure exactly what you had in your head, what you were trying to get. In this case, you might look at some of the Olga Sobey videos. She talks about how to layer paint in order to get some better cell reactions, especially right at the point that you start blowing one paint over the other. That's really where the cells that she works on jump out. If you didn't want cells, you got a great result without cells. If you did want cells, that's where I'd look specific to a pour like this. But hopefully this has helped you, and we'd love to see some of your paintings going forward.
Yeah.
That you change.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us for this acrylic pouring feedback video. It has been really fun for the two of us to get to look at your art and kind of treasure hunt our way through it and figure out what you did and what went wrong and what could be better. And thank you for asking for that feedback. Thank you, David, for joining me for this. It's been great to do this with you.
It's been a pleasure.
If you didn't see our last round of videos that we did a couple months ago, check out the link that is in the video description where we analyze some other paintings. And you can also feel free to ask questions and engage with us on Facebook if you have questions about your artwork. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye, guys.
Bye.